My name is Jeff Morgan. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I want to read a bill that was passed this last session, and I think this is a great bill. I think if you hear this bill, you're going to agree. It's called House Bill number 63. It was an act relating to reports of child abuse or neglect and certain preliminary investigations of those reports. And basically what this bill is going to do, it's going to say there's no more anonymous reporting. And this has been a big factor in a lot of people that have had to deal with child protective services or child predatory services, as I prefer to call them, because they are an awful agency. They claim to be protecting children, but they abuse children, they abuse families, they abuse fathers and mothers, they abuse grandparents, extended relatives, they abuse our kids and our grandkids. And anyway, be enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas, section 1261-104 of the Family Code is amended to read as follows, and it talks about the contents of the reports. Notice, the individual making a report shall identify, if known, so if you're making a report about an individual, a child that you think needs to be protected or predatorized, from my perspective of this agency, you need to identify, if known, the name and address of the child and the name and address of the person responsible for the care, custody, or welfare of the child. 3, the facts that cause the individual to believe the child has been abused or neglected and the source of information. Now, first off, it used to be that Children's Protective Services would come in if the child was in imminent danger, some type of harm, but now this abused or neglected. What do they mean by neglected? There's a lot of times. Neglected has a very wide spectrum of ranges. My child is out playing in the backyard and I'm not there hovering over him or her. That is neglect. My child did something that I wasn't aware of when I had to go to the bathroom or something. That is a neglect. So neglect is not defined, and that's a big problem with the Family Code right here. Abused or neglect. I don't even know what abused means, honestly. I know what I think it means, but when you come down to government agencies, you have to define what these terms mean because they take a lot of latitude in redefining these terms so that they can take your children from you and do other horrendous acts against you. So the child that has been abused or neglected and the source of the information, they must also take number 4, the individual's name and telephone number, the individual's home address, or if the individual is a professional for reporting child abuse or neglect and the individual is unwilling to provide the information described under subsection A4, and that would be the idea of the individual's name and number, the department representative receiving the report shall notify the individual that the department is not authorized to accept anonymous report of abuse or neglect. Number 2, the individual may report the abuse or neglect by making a report to any local or state law enforcement agency. And 3, the identity of an individual making the report under the subchapter is confidential and may be disclosed only as provided by section 261.201 or to a law enforcement officer for the purposes of conducting a criminal investigation of the report. The department representative or other person receiving a report of child abuse or neglect shall use the person's best efforts to obtain the information described in section A. So what this is basically doing, it's saying we're sick and tired of these anonymous reports. Anonymous reports that people may call Child Protective Services because they're upset with their neighbor and they want to cause problems to them. Anonymous reports where a mother or a father maybe wants to file a report against the other parent because they've gone through a divorce and the best way to get custody of the child is to provide an anonymous report. An anonymous report where perhaps even a law firm or an attorney will have somebody make a call against the opposing person anonymously so that it will help his or her client's case. This stuff goes on all the time. And it now looks like perhaps maybe this anonymous reporting stuff is going to be gone forever. Good riddance to it. If a report of abuse or neglect is made orally, the department or local or state law enforcement agency receiving the report shall, 1, notify the individual making the report that the report is being recorded. How about that? We're not going to have a recording of the reports. Maybe we've had that before, but at least the individual is now being told, hey, we're making a recording of this report. And I would hope that if they are lying, it would be used against them in a court of law to punish them for their lying against a person to try to destroy the parent-child relationship. An employee of the department may only have access to the identity of the person making a report of alleged or suspected abuse or neglect under this chapter if, 1, the employee is directly involved with an investigation, case, or other process involving the child who was the subject of the report, or the child's parent, or other person having legal custody of the child. 2, the employee supervises, directly or indirectly, an employee described by subsection 1, or 3, the employee has any other legitimate professional interest in an investigation, case, or other process involving a child who was the subject of the report, or the child's parent, or the other person having legal custody of the child, that necessitates access to the identity of the person who made the report. And what's very important here under N is that the department shall adopt rules to implement subsection M. The Child Predatory Services must actually now adopt rules to implement these things regarding the employees that are taking report. I think it's very important because in the past there have been bills passed and the agency has decided not to enforce the new aspects of the family code, not to adopt the rules, not to implement that which was passed by our House and Senate. I found out about this about 4 years ago, I think it was, 6 years ago. I don't remember exactly when it was. When I went down and spoke with a person, they said, well, let me see. Well, wait a minute. This was passed, but it's not been implemented. And they took me over to another place. We talked with people over there, and basically CPS found a way, an escape clause for them to not have to implement the rules that had been passed by our legislature. Section 3 says this, Section 261.304 Family Code is amended to read as follows. If an individual makes an anonymous report of child abuse or neglect by a person responsible for the child's care, custody, or welfare to a local or state, and I believe it's probably talking about law enforcement agency, and I apologize, part of this is cut off. Evidently my paper was a little bit too short. And then C, it also says, before taking any action under Section 261.304, a department representative must provide to a parent or other person having legal custody of a child who was under investigation, 1, information regarding the representative's identity. Well, that is good. So now you're going to be able to know who exactly the representative is that is going to be dealing with this. 2, a summary. The summary described in Section 1A, and 3, a reasonable amount of time to read or review the summary. Section 5 says this act takes effect immediately if it receives a vote of 2/3 of all members elected to each house. Unfortunately, for some reason, in neither the House nor the Senate did it receive a 2/3 vote. It passed, but it did not receive a 2/3 vote. And for those people who did not vote for this, I would like to know why. Why would you be against somebody actually knowing who's making an accusation against a parent or against somebody who's accused of abuse? Why do you accept this anonymous reporting? This has been used as a weapon against people. CPS has been weaponized. Our legislature has permitted this to happen for years and years and years. So it did not receive a 2/3 of all the members elected to each house. It received just under in both houses, but it was not 2/3. As provided by Section 39, Article 3 of the Texas Constitution, if this act does not receive the vote necessary for immediate effect, this act takes effect September the 1st, 2023. So in 3 months, this act should be going into place. It did pass the House. It passed 94 yeas, 51 nays, 2 present not voting, not quite 2/3, but close. In the Senate, the vote was taken on May the 18th, but the following vote was 20 yeas and 11 nays. And once again, close but not quite. Secretary of the Senate approved. So this has gone to the governor right now. And the governor should be signing this immediately. The governor, who has said on many occasions that he's for families and stuff like this, this should be a no-brainer. This should be one of the first pieces of legislation that he signs. We will stop the abuse that Child Predatory Services has been inflicting upon the people of the state of Texas. And as I mentioned this last time when I was down at the legislature, I mentioned it twice to the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee. Had it not been for the abusiveness of CPS, I probably would not be engaged in this fight for the last 10 years. We can accept a little injustice when what Children's Protective Services did to me and to my family, my relationship with the grandkids, and nobody did a thing. And Children's Protective Services representative Penny Hutchinson was allowed to say, well, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. And her boss, Mia, well, you know what, we just love your kids. She's never met my grandkids, but somehow she loves them. I begged them, I pleaded with them to tell the truth about what was going on. They refused to do so. Penny Hutchinson, the CPS caseworker, and her supervisor, Mia, who was in Dallas at the time, I believe she got promoted and transferred to Austin. These people refused to do anything to help. As far as I understand this act, this is an act that's going to stop anonymous reporting. If you are anonymous reporting, or in many instances anonymously lying to an agency to try to punish somebody, to try to make life hell and miserable for somebody that you don't like for whatever reason, try to get a leg up in a divorce, or make sure that the other parent does not have access to the children the way he or she should. Shame on you to begin with. And I hope the Children's Protective Services actually implements this stuff. And I hope that there's strict oversight. I still am one of the individuals who believes that the state of Texas owes us reparations for allowing this to take place. See, this has been going on for years and years and years. If you look at what Judge Janice Jack Graham has talked about, this was going on when George Bush was the governor of Texas in the 90s. This was going on when Rick Perry was the governor of Texas after George Bush. This was going on under Governor Greg Abbott. This has been going on for years and years and years. And finally, the legislature is going to get some integrity and pass something like this. This is a beginning. It's a good beginning. It's a little something. It's not what really should be done because they're still funding child's predatory services. I believe it's $4.89 billion over the next 2 years. It's an increase. We've got some extra budget money, so let's throw them another $300 million. How's that sound? Your tax dollars are supporting this abusive agency that has been able to hide behind lack of transparency, that has been able to destroy families, that have made families pay thousands and thousands, and I would probably say millions and millions of dollars fighting for their children and watching the trauma that the kids have gone through. I've watched this stuff in courts too. I've watched CPS attorneys go in there trying to take a child away or children away from a parent simply because one parent wants a divorce and thinks that it's better for the children to be reared in a foster household instead of with the mother or the father. That's how evil and wicked this system is. This is what I would call a good beginning. I am still looking for the abolition of CPS. We need to minimize the agency. And I also believe, too, that if we want to talk about integrity in our legislature, let's have a couple of years where we actually reopen some of these investigations and CPS starts to make public apologies and the state of Texas takes part of all of this great budget that they have and starts to make reparations. I have not seen my grandchildren for over 8 years right now. How do you put a dollar amount on that? And yet, I have talked with many, many people about this, legislatures. I've been in front of panels. I've spoken with them individually. Anyway, so this is, I think it's good news. Penny Hutchinson and Mia, I don't know your last name. I still have some recordings, though, from you, actually. What I did, that's when I started to record people. I did not record my conversation with Penny Hutchinson. I didn't know, I thought about it. I was so mad at the time that I decided I was not going to record. I was just going to get on the phone immediately. That was my bad. I should have been recording the entire thing. But I did record a couple of other conversations with CPS. It is an abusive agency. It's about time that we start to rein in this abusive agency. But the thing is, we're not going to be reining it in when we're giving it another $300 million plus for the next biennium. Valerie Swanson was the primary author of this bill. Joint authors were Candy Noble, Lacey Hall, Tom Olverson, Stephanie Click. There were 22 co-authors as well. This was first filed in November 14th, 2022. The joint authors signed on in May, and then the other co-authors signed on in, the joint authors signed on in March 13th, and then the co-authors signed on in May 1st, 2023. Once again, I will tell you that had it not been for the destruction that CPS has caused in my own family's life, I would not be doing this. So in that respect, perhaps I'm grateful, because when I saw what they did, I said my intent, my focus was going to be to try to destroy this system. To destroy the system that has been destroying families, to expose it, to do anything I could. I was hoping at one point in time to reform it. I think it's beyond being reformed. And once again, we can't not keep funding a system that has been destroying lives of our children, our grandchildren, parents, everything else. And that's all I have to say about this. Thank you, Valerie Swanson. Thank you for all the people that got this through. Governor Greg Abbott, I hope you sign this quickly. We need this. And as far as CPS is concerned, we still need to have people continue to hold them accountable. This is an abusive agency, and they are a predatory agency. They have hired people that many times aren't qualified. We cannot stop simply because we've got anonymous reporting now being not permitted in the state of Texas. And for one other thing here, I'm going to add this too, because they talked about, what if you're a professional and you're mandated reporting, don't want to report it. If you are a professional, that's all the more reason for you to put your name down there. Not to report anonymously, you little cowards, but to put your name down there. If you're a professional, you put your name down there. And again, for you attorneys that have been using this as a weapon in courts against the opposing party, whether it be a father or a mother, but not your client, shame on you. And you guys should also be forced to pay too. We need to have a little bit more penalties involved with this false reporting as well. Anyway, that's it. So I want to, again, thank you for this. And that's it. Thanks so much.